Last week, I blogged about Christian Post writer Matt Moore, a self-described redeemed sinner who posted an open letter to gay youth proclaiming that Jesus would save them from a life of drinking, drugs, and meaningless sex. As I'm sure you would expect, I found his goals misguided and his metaphysics incoherent. In response, one of my readers left a comment saying, "Why are people so threatened by Matt Moore's experience? Because it takes away their excuse to continue to sin? If Matt can be set free from sin, and God is real and homosexuality is sin, then it makes them wrong, and no one wants to have to admit that they are wrong and sinful. Is it easier to mock than face the possibility that Matt may be right? Could it be possible that you are wrong?" This may be the falsest false dichotomy I've ever witnessed. It seems this person believes the chance of that entire bundle of claims being true is high enough to warrant serious consideration, and they present it as though this is the only other option, rather than a conglomeration that becomes increasingly unlikely as a whole with every new claim that's added on. But even if Matt Moore's experiences contain some element of truth, this still doesn't demonstrate that any of these other things are real. While Moore might just be a religious huckster or opportunist, it's also entirely possible that he genuinely believes being gay means a life devoid of true happiness, and he feels that God personally called him to stop having relationships with men. It could be that his life was indeed terrible, and that his religious beliefs have helped him to become happier and more fulfilled as an individual, unlikely as it may seem. All of this might be the case, but none of it tells us anything about the validity of various supernatural and theological concepts. Moore's religious feelings and life experiences do not mean that the idea of sin is actually a real thing, or something that ever had any bearing on him. It does not mean that this sin is something he was set free from, or that it is something that anyone can be set free from. It doesn't mean that sin, whatever it is, has these particular dynamics at all. And it doesn't mean that being gay constitutes one of these sins. It doesn't show how the designation of sin would relate to any structure of morality. It doesn't tell us what the consequences are of this sin. It doesn't say why this is something for us to avoid. It also doesn't mean that any deities really do exist. It doesn't mean the specific Judeo-Christian deity named God exists, and it doesn't mean this God is actually capable of freeing us from our supposed sin. That's a whole lot of completely unsupported assumptions packed into just a few sentences, and the idea that we would find this the least bit threatening further assumes that we're just as ignorant as they are. Would they accept the testimony of a supposedly ex-gay Muslim as evidence in favor of a specific interpretation of Islamic doctrine and theology? It seems highly doubtful. So why would they think there's any reason to treat one Christian's feelings as credible evidence of claims like God is real and homosexuality is sin? And atop this logical house of cards, they rest the accusation that we must be seeking an excuse to continue to sin, which Moore's experiences allegedly deprive us of. But for it to be the case that our criticism of his writings is only a cover for our pursuit of a justification to sin, we would first have to accept all of the underlying assumptions that are required for the concept of an excuse to continue to sin to be meaningful. I certainly don't. So why would I think I needed any sort of excuse to keep doing something I don't believe is wrong? As Megan McArdle said, it is a vast and pervasive cognitive mistake to assume that people who agree with you or disagree do so on the same criteria that you care about. And our human conjunction fallacy here seems to believe the rest of us also suspect that the God exists, gays are sinning scenario could actually be true. In their estimation, we consider this probable enough to be scared by the possibility, but instead of accepting its ramifications, we've just chosen to stick our heads in the sand. What they fail to recognize is that we're not just on the other side of the fence here. We're actually worlds apart in our beliefs. They think we're talking on the same level as they are, but they've made the mistake of assuming that the entirety of their personal theology is accepted by everyone. It's rather like believing that those who don't follow your God must be worshipping the devil. They really don't understand just how much of this we truly don't believe. That's why they expected that out of all the possible sequences of supernatural claims, we would somehow be especially worried about this one. If anyone is feeling threatened here, it's probably the one who refuses to face the fact that their favorite god is neither loved nor feared by us, but completely absent from the equation. We see their god as no more of a cosmic danger to us than the gods of any other faith, and thus not a relevant factor in our lives. And because of us, they have to contend with the reality that there are people out there who aren't just selfishly denying a god they know in their hearts to be real, but who honestly see no reason to believe this. Is that so threatening? It shouldn't be, but I guess it's easier to ignore the possibility that you might be wrong.